Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our next Text Connect virtual event. I'm speaking to you from Austin. We are in the early stages of our legislative session. We're almost a month in. We have committees and bills are being filed. Don't have many to report on at this point. There aren't very many that have been filed that really touch our business, but we are doing our best to stay as engaged as possible under COVID protocols, and we are having legislators and staff come over to our offices all the time just to visit with us about issues. So if you have questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me via email or cell phone, and we can certainly help you get caught up as to what's happening with the legislative session. Our next legislative call will not be this Friday, but next Friday, the 19th at 2 o'clock, and we'll be sending out reminders of that. I want to thank Maxie and Gabe for helping us get this set up, and I want to thank our friend Andy Johns, who does lots of work with member companies and has helped TTA quite a bit. He's a very good and solid sponsor of our organization, and we are lucky to have him as an associate member. And I'm not going to belabor the point. I'm going to turn it over to you, and y'all enjoy what Andy has to share. And I'm going to sign off and get back to work.
All right, great. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate the invitation. Thanks to Bernice at Hill Country and Dee Dee over at East Tex for inviting me, and then for everybody at the association for making it happen. I was excited about being able to be together again in person one day, but I like these as well. I enjoyed the one that the eText crew did, Larry and everybody over there, their virtual presentation a couple of weeks ago, and I hope that you enjoy this one. So to introduce myself, I'm Andy Johns. I'm the marketing director for WordSouth, Pioneer Utility Resources and ARC Media. WordSouth's based in North Alabama, and a good crew of storytellers there. We enjoy working with some of the telcos there in Texas. If you remember, I'm going to share my slides here before we get going too far. Then we'll get started. All right, so branding beyond your logo is what we'll be talking about on this session. And if you remember the famous scene in The Lion King where Simba and his father are sitting out there, they're looking out at the Pride Lands, and Mufasa turns to Simba and says, "Everywhere the light touches Simba, branding is happening." Or maybe that's not exactly the way you remember it. Maybe we remember things differently. But don't spend too long on it. We've got a lot to cover, and we'll get through it. But in this session, we're going to talk about how critical it is for you to take a holistic approach to your branding and customer experience. Now, if a holistic approach to branding and customer experience sounds a little hokey, and you're thinking that we're going to be talking about essential oils and burning sage or that kind of thing, you're wrong, and I'm about to prove it. To do that, I've got a game I'd like for us to play. I'm going to throw some brands up on the screen for you. And I've got a couple of contestants who I'll introduce momentarily who will have, they'll have their slides turned off, so they won't be able to see that. They will only be able to see the chat window, where hopefully you guys will be willing to throw out some clues without using the name of the brands on screen. It's kind of like the heads up game that Ellen plays on her show, but we're doing it differently. So for example, this one won't count. But if I threw up Harley Davidson there on the screen, again, our contestants will not see that screen, but I'm hoping that you participants would throw things into the chat like motorcycle, chrome, leather, tattoos, orange and black, midlife crisis, whatever comes to your mind when you think of Harley Davidson. Our two competitors will be trying to guess the brand, and whoever guesses first will get the point. I'll keep score. At the end, the winner gets absolutely nothing, but I think it'll be a good time. So let's go ahead and meet our contestants. In this corner, that way on my screen, we have Maxie Hurst. Yes, I did spell her first name correctly. In addition to being the marketing manager for People's Telephone Equipment, she is a proud mother of 3 girls and recently had a sandwich named in her honor at a local restaurant, which is now a bucket list item for me. The pint-sized powerhouse of the Piney Woods to the Grand Ayatollah of Mineola, please welcome Maxie Hurst. Thank you, Maxie, for being on. They're all clapping, I'm sure. In this other corner, we have Gabe Herrera. Gabe is a graphic designer for Hill Country Telephone. He's a craft beer enthusiast and marathon runner with a cute dog who makes frequent appearances on Instagram. The inked up Emperor of InDesign, the Hill Country Hercules, Gabe Herrera. Please welcome Gabe. Thanks for being on.
Thank you.
Now, I've known both of these folks for years. We're happy.
Oh.
Gabe. All right. So we've worked together with these folks for a while. We podcasted together. We've never done anything quite like this before, but I did want to thank you all both for being on. So I'll give you guys a few seconds to get situated. And just to confirm that you guys right now are seeing the chat window. Have you got that pulled up where you can see it? But not the slides. So hopefully you are not seeing where it says contestants, Maxie and Gabe. Is that correct, Maxie?
That's right.
All right, Gabe, are you seeing it all right?
All I see is the chat window.
All right, great. Well, let's go ahead then. If everybody's ready in the chat, looks like Brianna has already thrown one in there for the last one, so don't be confused by that one. But motorcycle's already in the chat. There you go, Gabe. Now we see you. All right, if everybody's ready, I'm hoping that you guys will be willing to participate. If not, this is going to be a really awkward 3 or 4 minutes. But hopefully you guys will throw some of the comments out there. Make sure that when you are sending the chat, that the chat is set to panelists and attendees so that everybody will be able to see the comments. So remember clues, but without using the name or parts of the name. So contestants, if you guys are ready, we'll jump in.
Let's go.
All right. All right, there we go. There's the first one. Let's see if we get any clues coming in. All right.
Target.
Oh,
Oh,
I
Maxie
was
gets that
just
one.
about to say it.
1 point for 1 point for Maxie. Next. All right, Alex dropped a clue in there for us.
Pizza Hut, Domino's.
Not yet.
Papa John's?
Short man wants to buy quick.
Oh, Chef Boyardee.
Little Caesars.
Little Caesars. Gabe gets the point there. Short man. I like
Short
that.
man.
I like that.
That's how I got it.
Right. All right. Next up. Our next one is up there. Here we go. Where old people go.
Wait, wine, home cooking and gift shop. Cracker Barrel? No, they don't have wine. Yeah, Cracker
Oh,
Yeah, Cracker Barrel.
Gabe, yes. Gabe has
Do
two.
they have
Cracker
wine?
Barrel. He's got it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that a Texas
Who
thing?
knew?
I didn't know they did. They don't in Tennessee. Interesting.
They originated in Tennessee. So.
All right, here's our next one. They are, yeah. Score is 2-1. Here's our next one.
Lamborghini. Ooh, Tesla.
Tesla.
Oh, Gabe pulls ahead.
Man.
All right, we got another one. We've got 15 of these in total. So
There's still a
here we
chance
go.
that I
Here's the
can
next
win
one.
for no reward whatsoever.
Oh, it's still neck and neck. Yes.
Another pizza.
Subway?
Domino's. Oops, what? Another pizza sub sandwich.
Well, I was about to say that Maxie had the home
Jimmy
field
John's.
advantage
Yeah,
here with a
Jimmy
lot of
John's.
people.
Andy's last name.
There you go. No relation. No relation. All right, next one. Here we go.
Walmart.
All right, there's a clip. Oh, Gabe is pulling ahead.
Yeah, Walmart.
Where all the crazies go. We probably need to cut that one short before we get too far down that road. All right, the next one is up. Let's see what the clues are
Ford.
for this one. Ooh, that was awfully close. I'm gonna give that one to Maxie.
Oh.
Oh, we froze.
Frozen? Frozen 2.
Yep, I'm not frozen. Yeah, frozen 2. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, oh, you're the host now, Maxie.
Oh, well, the show just shifted.
uh, well,
Give Andy a second. He'll jump back in. He said I had a home field advantage with all my peeps in there, but it's not panning out so much. So thank you from all the attendees for chatting in, comments and compliments. So Rusty asked if we saw the cat lawyer from Alpine go viral. Lisa did. I didn't see it. Gabe, did you see that?
I did not.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Now I need to Google this.
Yeah. Oh,
So that was fun. Did you guys have a nice time talking amongst yourselves?
we did.
No idea. No idea. I'm not going to say that these are cursed, but that's two platforms and two different ones where it all works good in testing, and then something happens when we go live. So hopefully nobody ran up the score while I wasn't looking, but I'm showing a score of 5-2 here in Gabe's favor on this one. So let's go ahead. I'll share the screen. Maxie and Gabe, I don't know if you'll need to, I'll go to a blank slide to be sure that you don't see the next clue. But I appreciate everybody's patience, and I'm sorry about whatever just happened. Let me share the screen here. The connection was good, but Zoom crashed. All right, so everyone should be seeing a blank slide right now, except Maxie and Gabe. You should not be seeing a blank slide. So, are you guys still set there? Do we need to do anything else for you guys? You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's go on to the next one. Now that you've had time to think about everything, pull up the chat window here. Appreciate everyone's patience.
UPS.
Uh-oh, Gabe's got that one.
Golly.
I leave treats and water for them on my front porch. They're here all the time.
Oh, that's nice.
Home Depot.
Oh, Maxie got that one. Next up.
Garlic sauce. Papa John's.
There you go. Gabe's got that one.
I do
Next
love the
up.
garlic sauce.
All right.
Not open Sunday.
Oh, Chick-fil-A.
Oh, that was awfully close. I'm gonna give that one to Gabe. We gave the last tie to Maxie. So, number one, no pickles. So we know what Alex likes. I like it. All right, we've got just a couple more here. This might be a little tougher.
Shoes with customers.
Oh,
Zappos.
Zappos.
Ooh, Gabe with it quick. All right, careful. Don't say part of this name as you're giving the clues.
Redbox.
Redbox.
Oh, Gabe is on fire. All right, coming to the end here. Here we go. We may have one or two here.
Amazon.
Amazon.
Oh. All right. And I think this is our last one. So we're at 11-3 right now. I don't know if catching up looks tough. Let's try this one.
Ace.
All right. Maxie did get that one for sure.
I like that. Actually did get that one. Thanks.
Excellent. All right. So thank you again to our contestants. The final score looks like 11-4. So, Gabe, if there was something to win, you definitely would have won it. So I appreciate you guys both taking the time to do that. Hope you guys had fun, and I appreciate all of the folks there with the clues, because that could have been even more awkward if you hadn't participated. So thank y'all, and thanks again to Maxie and Gabe.
Of course.
So what words did you guys use? Because believe it or not, there was a point to that whole game. So some of the words that you guys use to describe those are a lot of what we're going to be talking about with this session. While I'm sure that a lot of what you were thinking about were colors and logos for things like Cracker Barrel and brown, Chick-fil-A and red, most of what we talked about in terms of branding, a lot to do with things outside of what most people consider traditional brand. So a lot of what you talked about was more customer experience than the graphics and the colors and the name. It was based on your experience in dealing with those companies. And I hope that's the big takeaway from that game, but also the big takeaway from really the whole session that we're doing here. How does the customer experience that your company delivers factor into what people say about your brand? So we talked about the position in the market. It was interesting. I think when Walmart came up there, somebody said not Target, and that was where the crazy folks go, because I guess they would say that the normal people go to Target, whatever that means. So the position in the market was there. When Little Caesars came up, somebody said cheap. That's part of what they do. The pricing and promotions are a part of the brand. So with Little Caesars, the hot and ready $5 pizza is a big part of that. The delivery method, somebody said freaky fast when it was so that's part of the brand, even though it's not a color or a logo. We also talked about the employees a little bit. So either how they present themselves, how they dress. The Cracker Barrel staff wears the brown aprons. UPS has the brown uniforms in the truck. the Chick-fil-A crowd, the folks there say, "My pleasure." On one of these that I had done, this is about the third time I've done this presentation. On one of them, I put Hooters on there as a brand to guess, but I decided I wasn't even going to go there with this crowd. We were going to stay a long way away from that. But also, it was talked about on there about how the buildings look is part of the brand. When Cracker Barrel came up, y'all talked about the rocking chairs out front. The Home Depot, when you think about that, you think of the great big warehouse with the stuff all the way up high. That's part of their brand. With Tesla and with Ford, I think a little bit we got into it on kind of the story behind the company, that they've got Tesla is trying to revolutionize the auto market with electric cars. Ford has that long patriotic history. You think of America when you think of Ford as part of their story. And as the folks that work with WordSouth, that we're all about telling those stories. So I like this definition of branding because it goes way beyond, as the topic of this session describes, it goes way beyond just the logo. This is from the American Marketing Association. It says, branding is the ongoing process of establishing, defining, and maintaining a name, term, design, symbol, or any other feature that identifies one seller's good or service as distinct from other sellers. So I like this for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's an ongoing process. It's not something that you do once and then you leave it alone. You don't come up with a brand and then walk away. You have to maintain it, and it's an ongoing process of establishing and defining it. I also like that it says a name, term, design, symbol. Okay, we get all those. That's kind of the traditional thinking of branding. But then it's got in there any other feature that identifies one seller's good or service as distinct. So all of those things that we were talking about there, the freaky fast delivery, the pleasant employees, the uniforms, all of those things go into what I would consider that any other feature that identifies one seller's goods or services as distinct from the other. So I like that definition, and I wanted us to keep that in mind. If you've done the training with us, or if you have been on some of our webinars that we've done, you know that we've got Dart Broadband as a fictional company. We've got a whole crew of happy people who work there. We use them as examples sometimes, but this episode, or this session, we're going to be looking specifically at Jill, who is the customer that we have made up for those scenarios. So Jill has just moved to your community. She is a single parent with a few days to set up her home and get back to work. She works remotely for a large insurance company, so broadband service is a must, and it's urgent since she only has a couple of days to set it up before she has to start work. Her list of things to get done before she starts work is long, and the movers are coming the next morning. Jill's mobile is her only link to finding everything she needs to know to get going and get her office ready before she's connected to your service. So whether she knows it or not, whether she thinks about it this way or not, Jill is on a journey. And I have seen customer journeys that have all sorts of different channels, and they can get very complicated if you start overlaying all the different segments of your audience. If that works and if that helps you, absolutely do those. More power to you. For this example, we're going to use just 5 simple stages of the customer journey. And we're going to get into those in terms of how your brand is represented, whether you know it or not, whether you planned on it or not, your brand is being represented at each one of those steps. The awareness phase of the journey, you're looking at how do they find out about you. The interest phase, you're looking at kind of the initial research and finding out more of what your company offers. Purchase is pretty self-explanatory. That's when you close the sale and the purchase happens. Retention is what you're doing to try to keep them from leaving, try to fight churn and keep them happy along the way. And then the sweet spot, you're not going to get all customers there, but some folks you can get all the way along the journey into advocacy, which is where they start becoming a really loyal customer. They speak highly of you. They refer friends. They'll give you good reviews. They will defend you on social media if somebody starts talking bad about you. But at each step along the way, you need to have a plan to intentionally establish your brand. Remember, it's an ongoing process of establishing that brand so that you keep yourself distinct from your competitors. Let's look at those first 2 phases. So this is how Jill finds out about your company, where she does her initial research, and where that first impression is going to be formed about your brand. Maybe that comes from web search, maybe that comes from digital ads, social media, maybe the sales team comes to her door. She could get a referral from real estate agents, a word of mouth from a friend or a new coworker, somebody who lives in the area. Maybe she saw a billboard on her way into town. Word of mouth is usually a big deal here, and we'll talk about that near the end on some things to do there. But if you're selling broadband, you want all of those things that she's finding out to help sell the service. You want her to find out good things and feel better about your company as you go along. It's important to remember for the folks who have multiple things they're offering, the same customer could be at a different spot in the journey for your security product than they are for your broadband. Or if you do TV or some of the other options, usually those are going to be in step because of the bundles. But it's possible on some services like security that the same customer may be on two different journeys for two different services. So important to keep that in mind. So what happens when they look you up the first time? If they Google the name of your company, what do they see? I've got an example here from Loretto Telecom in Tennessee. This is, I'm only using them as an example because they did absolutely nothing wrong here. And that as soon as we found this for them, they helped correct it and got it squared away in a hurry. So back in early 2020, the first thing that you saw when you Googled Loretto Telephone was this screen that came up. And I'm not sure how well you see the image there on the right, so I've blown it up for you on the next slide. I'm sure that this gentleman is a fine young man, but I'm also sure that that's not the ideal photo that you want to come up the first thing when you Google, when somebody Googles your name. So we work with them to change that out. And now when you Google Loretto, the first thing that comes up is a nice newly wrapped bucket truck. Zoom in there. It's got the outside of the building, which is, not beautiful, but at least the bucket truck is a significant improvement there. For folks to be able to see. It's a much better look. So the moral of that story, and what I really hope the moral of this whole session is for you guys, is to put yourself in your customer's shoes, walk through their customer journey. There's a good chance that most of the people at that telco don't Google themselves very often because they know how to get to work every day. They know the name of the company. They know the phone number. Those will be the main reasons that potential new customers out there would be looking you up. So it's important to put yourself in their shoes, do things like search internet, Wi-Fi, fiber, and then a community that you serve just to see what comes up. If you're not in the top few, then that may be something you need to get into with the search engine marketing. Might mean sending Google a little bit to move yourself up in the rankings, but you need to be up high and you need to be represented well. Back before the pandemic, the stat I had seen around was that 63% of shopping experiences start online. And while we may think about that with things like shoes or tech products, things like that, more and more those shopping experiences are starting online for services like the services that you guys provide. When you look, check yourself out on there, look at images, look at ratings, look at reviews, anything that comes up to see what you can do to make those better. For this exercise, I would say treat your company's service the same way that you would treat a new plumber or mechanic or software provider that you were looking to hire yourself. Think about the ways that you would find out more about them, and then do the same thing for your company to try to see how you're represented and how you can make it better. Now, ideally, after they have looked you up on Google, they're going to go to your website. This is a site that we just took live a couple of weeks ago for the West Texas Rural Telephone Cooperative out there. This is their radio division. But all the sites need to be what we call the STAR system, which is searchable, translatable, accessible, and responsive. So searchable, you need to do some things so the content is searchable. It shows up in search engines, and ideally you see there they can hit the magnifying glass and search the website to find what they want. It needs to be translatable. That was important with West Texas because they have not only a high number of Spanish speakers, but they have a large immigrant population from one of the African countries that I was not as familiar with. And that was a big deal for them to have it translatable so that those folks could access things on the website to learn more about the service that they provide. It needs to be accessible, and it's important to keep in mind that as that customer journey starts, we don't all start in the same spot. So I start in a different spot as an able-bodied English speaker with a nice computer. I'm going to start at a different spot on that customer journey than somebody who may have some accessibility issues, somebody whose English is not their first language, somebody who has an old computer or out-of-date browser, or who's only using their phone. All of these things play into it to make it accessible to them. And of course, responsive, we talked about that a little bit already with just having have it be responsive for the different size devices, whether it's a computer screen or a phone, a tablet, or anything in between. So all of those things are important on that initial phase. You don't want a stumbling block at the beginning because they can't access the content on your website. Social media is another spot that increasingly folks are checking more and more to find out about a company. So your social media and your website, all of what they're finding already are telling them what you do, what programs you offer, what services, how they can get it. All of those things are usually on your website and hopefully big and obvious on your social media. But the other important thing to keep in mind that folks are looking to learn on your social media is who you are. You know, they can see the way that you're interacting with customers on there. They can see if you ignore comments. They can see if you're responding and quickly and friendly on there. So it tells them a lot about who you are when you're sharing, not just the way you interact, but with the posts you share about your involvement in the community and the way that you tell your story. That's kind of the way that I like to think about social media is, again, like I said, it tells them who you are. So let's move on to the all-important purchase step. And this step, Jill is signing up for your service. And maybe she goes online on her mobile phone and tries to sign up. Maybe she is calling in. Maybe she's coming to the office if your lobbies are back open, depending on the restrictions and everything there. So as we talked about with the website, the more mobile friendly you can make it, if you're able to do the shopping cart tools where they can sign up online, that's a great spot. That's where some people want to go with their customer journey. But I think especially as we're coming out of COVID and we're getting back to people visiting in lobbies in person, they may already be in some spots. But looking at that in-person visit is important and something that I think we all need to consider. There's a term that I learned in MBA school called Servicescape, and it is literally the only word that I remember from MBA school. So it's a very expensive word for me that I wanted to share with you guys. But Servicescape is the relationship between the physical ambiance and place and its impact on service delivery and perception, both for customers and for staff. So that definition comes from the Oxford Dictionary of Marketing. But the full definition there, if you're looking at that relationship between the physical ambiance and place and its impact on the delivery and perception of the service, a full definition of that is going to include things like the temperature, the lighting, the furnishings, the color, the scent, the music or the sounds that are in the lobby or you know, where they're interacting, how you use the space, if it was confusing to find out which window to go to, if they knew where to go when they get there. All of that stimulates that customer psychology in terms of how they perceive your brand. Remember what Mufasa said, everywhere the light touches, branding is happening. So as you're getting into that, let's run through some of those things to think about. So of course the lobby is an important part of that. That's the first thing they're going to see when they walk in the building. But have you ever given any thought to how the lobby sounds or smells? That's part of the psychology there, how it feels. You know, if it's always kept cold because that's how the employees like it, but you've got older folks coming in there to sign up for service and they're uncomfortably cold the whole time, that's something to consider. The front of the building is literally the first thing they're going to see either when they drive by or when they get out of the car to come in for service. It doesn't have to look like the clubhouse at Augusta National or an Apple store. A lot of the buildings I know have been there a while and you're limited with how much you can do with that, but it needs to be welcoming there. And there should be some things that you can do with signage and making sure that you're making as good an impression as possible with what you have to work with for your building. Forms to fill out are something you may or may not have thought about. If they come in to sign up for your cutting edge fiber service and you hand them the sign up form that has been copied 850 times since 1996, that probably doesn't lead a great impression for them if you've got, if you've got out of date forms or, the channel lineups I know are a big pain for folks. That whenever the channels will change slightly, you've got to do a whole nother round, and or you have the marked out, crossing things off and all that. That leaves an impression. Obviously, you'll have to make a decision on whether or not you have it makes sense for you to reprint for one channel change. But those are all things that represent your brand. The installer vehicle is key. You want it to look like somebody is coming up to install cutting edge technology, not like they're coming to rob the house. Materials that goes into, like I was talking about with the channel lineup, but all of the materials that you have out there, the sales collateral, any brochures, things like that, you want to be sure that they're representing your brand the way that you want. Employee dress, often a controversial one here as to what the rules are there. And I know each company has their own policies, but that is something to consider. Things like foot coverings when your installers are coming into the homes, if they need to do that. Then to have those little blue booties or whatever whatever color they may be to go onto their feet so they don't track mud in is an important thing that people notice these days. Having masks ready if the customer feels more comfortable with your folks wearing a mask, that's an important thing to consider as well. Like the website, you may not call into your office very much. So I would put yourself in your customer's shoes and think about the hold music that you have. Think about the phone menu. How many options do they have to go through to get to a real person? That's always usually a major selling point, a major benefit that folks have going with the independent telco, the community-based folks. Like most of the TTA members, is that they can get to a real person, and it's much less frustrating than calling one of the big corporately owned internet providers where they have trouble finding a real person. But making sure that hold music and the phone menu are representing your brand the way that you want to are important as well. The last two things, signage is a key, and then equipment. So we'll talk about those two briefly. Signage is kind of self-explanatory. You want your building to be well presented. You want people to know where it is to be able to find it. But when they're inside, I've seen some really cool things folks have done with putting ads and signs in the glass entryways there. Some things you can do thinking outside the box to really deliver that feel that you're going for with your brand, even if you're building, you can't change the architecture, but you can change the signage in most cases. And lastly, the equipment is something that may be overlooked. You're limited a little bit based on what your equipment providers may have. Some of the new Wi-Fi 6 routers look really cool. Others, the router that I've got from my IE, it's large, it's tall, it falls over all the time. And but at least have the ISP's logo on there so that anytime I look at it, I can see their brand right there to as a reminder who the provider is. So hopefully if you do all of those things right, purchase step, Jill's going to sign the contract, feel great about it, and be excited to work with you guys. And then it works right into the next two steps of the journey, which is retention and advocacy. These are the last stages. Some folks you're going to stick in retention. Other folks, like I said earlier, you may be able to make it all the way to advocacy with them. Customers often think, and I'm sure you guys have heard it too, that they are forgotten after the intro. That they may see that the new customers get some sweet deal that they don't and feel less important. So how are some ways that you can connect and engage with Jill after she has signed up for your service already? So there are things like an email newsletter, magazines, personalized email on some kind of drip campaign that will email her from time to time, customer appreciation events, celebrating milestones, any chance you get to remind them of that relationship you have whenever you're in contact with them. I like one of the things that Verizon usually does. When you call in for a question about your account, they'll say, "Thank you, Mr. Johns. It looks like you've been a customer with us for 12 years. appreciate your trust in us. It's just a nice reminder, 12 years is a long time. I've had this provider the whole time, and thinking of all the things that I have, all the times I've called people and talked to people over the 12 years, that kind of reminds me of, here's a partner that I have been working with for a long time. It's a nice little touch just to remind people about that relationship. It's interesting too, when you provide folks a way to reach out, the doors that can open. For instance, if you, there may be folks that have your service, and it's summertime, they signed up in wintertime, but now that it's summer, they're out in the backyard more, they're wishing the Wi-Fi reached out there. They may just assume that's all they can get, and it's working in their backyard. So that may lead to churn while they're looking for another provider that can have a signal that'll reach out there. They may not take the time to bother to call you and say, hey, do you have any solutions on how I can get the Wi-Fi service out in the backyard now that it's warmer weather? But if you give them an opportunity through a customer satisfaction survey, if they're on a drip email campaign where it checks in on their service, if somebody on your sales team is calling, making sure, hey, we're 90 days out from when you signed up, want to be sure you're still happy, that gives them, that prompts them to go ahead and let you know what may be a struggle. And it gives you a chance to either upsell or at least do some things to make that customer happy, so they're not as likely to leave. When you're doing customer satisfaction, when you're reaching out during that retention and advocacy phase, it's important to ask some of the deeper questions. There's a study that we had seen from McKinsey about when looking at a company that was losing business. The company was confused because they had a customer satisfaction score of 90%, which sounds great. But as McKinsey went in there and really dug deep, what their folks found was that the cumulative score, when they asked specific questions, the satisfaction was more around 40%. So if they just asked, are you satisfied with your service? 90% were good with it. But when they ask specifically about things like, are there recurring problems that are not addressed? Do you have long hold times whenever you call in? Is your service personalized to meet your needs? Do the salespeople who have talked with you, do they know the products well? And have they researched the root of your problems when you've called into tech support? When you ask those specific questions and then average them out, the company found out that they were only about 40% satisfaction, just because they had not been asking deep enough to kind of prompt folks to tell them what the problems really were. So on this advocacy stage, which is the holy grail and the spot where you would love to get everybody, that goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning during that awareness phase. So we talked about word of mouth being a major way that people are going to find out about you early on. Let's say that Jill has signed up for your service, you've done everything right, and she gives you a 5-star review on either Google or Yelp or any of the different services out there where people can write reviews on service providers. What are you doing, if anything, to support Jill, to thank her for doing that? Maybe there's a way to reward her somehow. What if Jill defends you on social media? Somebody comes out and says, this broadband provider is terrible, I can't stand them. And Jill gets out there and says, well, hey, I just moved from another territory and this is so much better than that. We're lucky to have this. Maybe there's a way to send something to Jill to say thank you. Maybe there's a way to find a referral program, some other things like that to help Jill to find those folks in that advocacy phase and really reward them and do some things so that they can help you with that word of mouth. One of the big ways not to overlook with that word of mouth and advocacy is making sure that your employees are informed and engaged in what you're doing. We all know that in the service area, they're going to get calls at work about what's going on, and then they're going to have people ask them at the ball fields, at the grocery store, at church, any of those places, hey, what's going on with this? I heard there's fiber coming in. When's the fiber my way? Those sorts of things. If the employees are engaged and can give a good answer, that helps spread that word of mouth, rather than if the employee says, I don't know, nobody ever tells me anything. I don't know when it's going to happen. You can see how that would make a much better impact if they are informed and engaged there. So last slide here. Hopefully you're not feeling too overwhelmed. There was a lot that we talked through there. Anytime you're talking about a holistic approach, it may feel like a lot to get started on. I would say don't feel like you have to do it all overnight. There's no way to revamp your entire customer journey that quickly. I would say one of the suggestions that I've given folks before is to break it down into these 5 steps and focus on one of the steps of the customer journey each quarter. So if you start now, you've got 4 quarters this year and 1 quarter next year. So by the time it rolls into next spring, you will have revamped every stage of that customer journey and really focused on the materials, the atmosphere, the effort that you're putting in to try to make that customer journey as good as possible for your customers in order to represent your brand the way that you want it represented. I would say you don't necessarily have to go in order there. And in some ways you may not want to start with awareness. If the other parts of the customer journey are kind of broken down and not working the way that you want, you don't necessarily want to get a bunch of them in the funnel if you don't have the purchase step and some of the other steps set up. So maybe start with purchase and then go to interest or retention and then work your way out. That you hit all of those steps so that you are ready to present yourself in the best way possible. So I want to thank everybody again. If you have any questions, I was looking at the chat to see if we had anything come in. Looks like we are in pretty good shape. Oh, Gabe had said that a Bath and Body Works plugin at the, Gabe is a photographer as well. And so at Expo booth he had there, the Bath and Body Works smell attracted folks over there. So there you go. It's a perfect example of Servicescape looking kind of outside the box there. So I want to thank TTA. I want to thank Bernadette, who had invited me to present. I want to thank our contestants, Maxie and Gabe, for participating, and for all of y'all who logged on. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you take something away from it. I'm happy to help if there's anything that I can do or any questions I can answer. But otherwise, I look forward to seeing you either on some of these virtual sessions in the future or when we're able to get back together in person.